Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, he's Chris, and we're here to help you for the 2022 fantasy season. That's right, we're always looking ahead, we're always ready to help you win. So we're gonna help you by identifying some early wide receiver breakout candidates, some guys that could be even league winners. So let's start, Chris, with your first breakout candidate.
Well, in 2021, I was hashtag never Shenault. But in 2022, I'm gonna be hashtag maybe Shenault. I don't really know how to go with that one, but I'm back on the Laviska Shenault train. I know this was a guy that was hyped up big time heading into 2021. Just didn't happen for him. The whole Jaguars offense really didn't happen, but there's reasons to actually be optimistic about him. Namely, no Urban Meyer. Whoever they bring in at coach has to be an upgrade over Urban Meyer, because I don't think anybody could be worse than Urban Meyer. And you've got to think this offense, even if it's not an elite offense next year, or even if it's not a very good offense next year, it has to be a better offense than it was in 2021, because that was one of the worst offenses we have ever seen. So if they bring in a new head coach who can help develop Trevor Lawrence, help get the most out of Trevor Lawrence, they probably are also going to be able to get the most out of Laviska Shenault. They're likely going to be able to find creative ways to use him, get him involved in the game plan, get him used in ways that benefit his skill set. I believe in 22, it will be Laviska Shenault's third year breakout. So don't give up if you drafted him last year, or if you were all into him last year. I think it happens. We were just 1 year too late.
I don't even know what to do with all that. You went from never Shenault to maybe Shenault, and I have so many thoughts, but I can't share them all now. We don't have enough time, but we'll see what happens. I was a Shenault truther. I don't know where I stand right now. We're of the age where we remember it used to be the third year wide receiver breakout. That was the big thing, right? Look for those guys entering their third season. They've learned how to play. And now it's like, game 3 of the rookie season. You got wide receivers breaking out. But second year breakouts are still a thing. So you have a guy like Nico Collins, who was on Houston, got some run early, got injured, kind of didn't do much in the middle of the season, and then started coming on later in the season. Nothing amazing, nothing that most fantasy owners would really pay attention to. 23 targets over the past 4 games, between week 13 through 17 at least. I think that target share can only go up because, he's going to be involved more. I think the quarterback situation has to get better. Either they're going to sign somebody. Don't know if they're going to go out and draft a quarterback. We'll see how that happens. But even if they go with Davis Mills, look, I'll say I was very skeptical about Davis Mills as a rookie, but he has progressed. He's shown some signs. They might stick with him, and that means there's some chemistry between a second-year quarterback, second-year receiver, and so even that would be promising. So I think the situation there has to get better. I don't think Houston's going to be a great offense, but Nico Collins will at worst be the number 2 option there behind Brandon Cooks. He's got 6'4" size. He can be a red zone threat. He's got speed. Everything is in place for him to take a step forward. So I really like his potential, and that's why I'm identifying him as a potential breakout. All right, Chris, who else you got in mind?
I've also got a second-year breakout for you, and that is Josh Palmer. We saw in the 2 games where either Mike Williams missed or Keenan Allen missed, it wasn't Jalen Guyton who stepped into that role. It was Josh Palmer, the rookie, right? He had 5 catches and a touchdown the week Mike Williams missed, and he had 5 catches and a touchdown the week Keenan Allen missed. And Mike Williams is set to be a free agent this year, and it's not a certainty that he comes back to the Chargers. He could get offered big money by another team and leave in free agency. We see it happen all the time. And if that happens, I think the Chargers are ready just to have Josh Palmer slot into that number 2 role. They drafted him last year for a reason, and this is the reason. He's attached to Justin Herbert, who, last time I checked, is a pretty good quarterback. He's in a good offensive system. Everything is there for Josh Palmer to break out in his second year, assuming Mike Williams does leave in free agency, which I think is going to happen. So look at Josh Palmer as a guy you can draft pretty much with your last pick in most drafts, or at least towards the end of most of your drafts, who has the potential for a big 2022 season.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Palmer. I've got a lot of him in Dynasty, especially in the leagues where I already have Justin Herbert. That might make a nice pairing. So I got another Michigan receiver, oddly enough, and this is different than what we just talked about with Palmer, because this is a guy who's not attached to a great quarterback. So Donovan Peoples-Jones, talented guy, but Baker Mayfield, that's not exactly very inspiring. Who knows? There's all sorts of talk about whether they're even going to have him around next year, talking about trading him for Deshaun Watson. You name it, the rumors are out there. Basically, people in Cleveland are worried, and everyone else just thinks he's a bum. So either Baker Mayfield gets better, they trade for Deshaun Watson. You want everybody on that offense, right? All those receivers, because it'll make them better. But even with the shell of the Baker Mayfield that we saw this season, Peoples-Jones has some productive games. He had 5 games over 70 yards, and ever since Odell Beckham left, he averaged 5.6 targets per game on a primarily run-first offense. That's pretty good, and this is a guy who doesn't need heavy target volume. He's a field stretcher, he's a big playmaker, so he always has that boom potential. You know, this is not necessarily a guy you lock in as a wide receiver 2 or 3, but he's a guy who you can roll out in good matchups, and he can get you that production. So I do like him taking a step forward as well. He's a guy I'm going to have on my radar, and I'm going to have probably in a ton of best ball leagues for sure. All right, who else do you think might break out at wide receiver?
This guy kind of had a mini breakout this year, but I think next year he gets a full-on breakout, and that is Van Jefferson of the Rams. Over 700 yards, 6 touchdowns this year. And there's reasons to think he could expand on that next year. Number 1, Odell Beckham. We don't know what the future holds for Odell Beckham. Number 2, Robert Woods tore his ACL. Not late in the season, kind of early in the season. But this is a 30-year-old wide receiver. It's not going to be easy for him to recover from that ACL injury. So we got to think Van Jefferson, at worst, continues his role as the deep threat in a Matt Stafford, Sean McVay-led offense. You want the deep threat in a Sean McVay, Matt Stafford-led offense. And if Odell Beckham doesn't return, and if Robert Woods does struggle to recover from the ACL injury, Van Jefferson could just slot in as the team's number 2 receiver next year, which would be a huge boost to his value. So this is another guy going into that 3rd year where we typically think, the 3rd year breakout. I could see it happening next year for Van Jefferson in a great offense, attached to a fantasy-friendly quarterback and a fantasy-friendly coach. So I think Van Jefferson's a guy you should be targeting everywhere you can next year as a potential breakout wide receiver.
Absolutely. All signs point to another step forward for him. Now, Darnell Mooney of the Bears, I'm going to say, hasn't quite broken out yet. Right now, before the final week of the season, at 929 yards, maybe he gets to 1,000, right? And that's pretty good. But how many weeks was he really in your fantasy lineup? So here's the thing. Mooney now has a chance to be the clear number 1 receiver. I mean, technically he was the number 1 receiver this year, even though he shouldn't have been. Allen Robinson, let's not get started on that. But Robinson, it's a pretty safe bet. He's not going to be back in Chicago next year. Darnell Mooney will be the guy, and he gets to grow with Justin Fields, who, again, a little inconsistent as a rookie. We know he's going to get better, super talented. The chemistry was developing. So I think Mooney can go from a fringe 1,000-yard receiver to a every week wide receiver 2. And if Matt Nagy gets fired, besides all Chicago celebrating, I think we can expect this offense to get a lot better. So Mooney's a guy I think could go from a solid fringe start receiver to an absolute lock, maybe top 20 fantasy receiver. All right, those are some of our breakout candidates for the 2022 season. Let us know what you think. Guys, join the discussion. We're here all off season. Just because the fantasy football season is over doesn't mean that we stop. Join our Discord. Check out the description below for information on that and ways that we can help you prepare for next year. All right, thanks for watching.